Alright, people, alright. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم. أهلا وسهلا بكم مرحبا 欢迎来自 bienvenidos a todos people بخير راغلي خوش آمدید and as always swagatam. People, welcome back to Monday Nights with Mufti. वाह यार क्या बात है. God, I'm exhausted today. I was like, yaar, I need a solid cup of tea, I think. Just move this to the side. So what is going down with Ramadan around the corner? Questions galore, panic in the air, fitan fasad going on. Thoda bahut to banta hai yaar. What else is going on? Alright. Sahih Sheikh, ahlan wa sahlan, all the way from India. Wah, wah, wah. Kya kehne. Shera da put. Alright. Kidda. Sasriyakal ji, sasriyakal. And Naz, you're doing it. Zeba. Alright. So, let me bring up my Facebook gente as well. Just make sure that they can, here it is. Right, just make sure they can hear me all good as well. Right, there it is. It's brought it up. You know what it is? This, for bringing up the Facebook comment, it sometimes drags a little. All the way from Antwerp. Alright, people, alright. In fact, that reminds me. Let me, whilst I'm going to go through this, let me go through the slides here, the usual. Show you guys the latest episode. If you haven't already subscribed, people, then what on earth are you waiting for? This was the... Where's it gone? Alright, the latest episode of Mind Trap. That was 15. Now, let me just... bring this down slightly. Yeah, so that was episode 15. If you haven't seen that, it was by far, I feel, perhaps the most controversial episode till date. But it's definitely, I'd love to get your feedback on it. Let me just share the... Yeah, you're trying to do one thing and the phone's all these bloody pop-ups and notifications. Right, let me just go into here to share this and then we is good to go. Alright, wait. Come on, you could do it. Ugh. Yeah, I mean, today got a bit later than usual, but I think, in some ways, I feel that's the, I don't know, I think that's just the story of my life, I think. Honestly, that's what I kind of feel sometimes. Hamesha der kar deta hu main. You know that famous poem of Munir Niazi? I really feel that. I think that's just so true. Come on. You could do this. Why is it not loading? Oh, there it is. Just about. Right, just gonna press share. So yeah, I always kind of feel that I'm always kind of playing catch up in life. I don't know whether that's a common feeling with other people, but I'm, it's always, I don't know, it's like whether I'm a few hours behind or a few days behind sometimes. I don't know. Let's to adri, huh? Right. So, alright, that's done. So, what is going down, people? What is going down? Let me bring back your... First of all, whilst people are tuning in, whilst you guys are clicking like and share, like you always do. You know what's funny is, on my YouTube videos, every single video, as soon as I put it out, there's this one guy or girl, presumably, but I'm assuming it's a guy, who is so dedicated to always disliking my video. So there's this one always downvote, always. Like, I could just put it up now. There's no way that the person would have watched the entire video. Like, let's say I've done Mind Trap and it's 3 hours long. I mean, there's no way they could have just watched it, but straight, within minutes there'll be this one, always one. I'm just so intrigued that who is this person? Alright, so let me bring up. Well, some of you are clicking like and share. सूरते शम्मा पिघल जाऊंगा लेकिन तुम लोग सूरते शम्मा पिघल जाऊंगा लेकिन तुम लोग मैं किसी कब्र पे जल जाऊंगा लेकिन तुम लोग मैं किसी कब्र पे जल जाऊंगा लेकिन तुम लोग कार वाले हो तुम्हें रास्ता मिलना मुश्किल मैं तो पैदल भी निकल जाऊंगा लेकिन तुम लोग शेर देखें वासिफ साहब कि मैं मुनव्वराना सर मैं खरा नोट हूं सीलन में पड़ा था कब से मैं खरा नोट हूं सीलन में पड़ा था कब से मैं तो कुछ कम में भी चल जाऊंगा लेकिन तुम लोग People, what is going down? Let's move to some of your questions. Let's bring them up. And some of the comments. We've got a comment from Azhar Muhammad. Need Sheikh Kashif again. You're doing it. Sheikh Kashif was awesome. Had an amazing chat with him. Even after we finish the whole podcast, we're still kind of conversing, chatting on Skype. He's amazing. I really loved his courage. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody, Asma says, Pranam, Mufti Ji from Pranam. Right, so, yeah. Somebody, when will you have a link up with Nouman Ali Khan and Hamza Ali Abassi? Right, yeah, so Hamza Ali Abassi Saab has said to me previously that he's more than happy to come on this, he'd love to come on this podcast. So I was just, you know what it is, because my early batch is going through a lot of, I'm going through teething issues, and I know that, so I'm trying to, every single day, I mean, you guys won't notice this, but behind the scenes, I'm doing something like with the hardware. So on some of the days, I've replaced, I mean, I've had mic issues. I've replaced now the whole kind of computer PC. So I've kind of had it all wired to this room. So even though I'm doing it from my other room, but it's kind of wired to this kind of special focused gaming laptop, which is much more powerful. So I've had that done, then the wires, then the extension, then connecting this, then having all these kind of monitors set up, then the mic issues, and I've been replacing that and trying out substitute mics, and I've ordered some professional ones and they're on their way. Just there's a delay because of the the quarantine. But my point is that every single day I'm kind of learning something. And you see, the reason I didn't want to kind of bring on really esteemed kind of guests straight away was, I mean, not saying that our other guests ain't esteemed, but I mean like super celebrities. Like Hamza Ali Abassi Saab, or huge profiles. I don't want them to come on and then we've got a streaming issue or we've got a mic issue. I want all these to have kind of, so I'm hoping by the time I've done between 20 to 30 episodes within this quarantine, it's going to be smooth. I mean, I'll have everything on lock. And then I'm, more than happy to start setting that up. But do watch them. They're very, you see, the whole purpose behind them is real talk. I'm being very real in these things. Even with Sheikh Kashif, it was a discussion on, it ended up on matters like pornography, on things like, more sex-related kind of issues. But, as it always does, no matter what we're discussing, it always returns to... it's quite Freudian in that sense, that everything comes back to sex. It's all, it's as Oscar Wilde said, that, everything is about sex. Except sex, of course, which is about power. Wah, 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 wah. Oscar Wilde, some of his quotes. Right, so people, I hope that... and Nak, I have reached out to Nak, but I'm not sure. I think he's going through a whole kind of phase where he's revamping and doing stuff. So I don't know whether he would respond, whether he'd be keen to do it right now. I don't know. I don't think so. I think maybe he needs a bit of time to kind of rebrand himself, as I think he's trying to rebrand and do the whole thing and emerge differently. So yeah. Zeba, much love, shukran, may you be blessed as well. I dearly appreciate that. Yeah, Mina, shukran, I'm honored. Right, so somebody said get Sheikh Yasir Qadhi on here. Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm happy to get all of these people on here. What I would advise you guys, or request you guys, is if you people are in touch with some people who are interesting and interested. You see, this second point is important. They have to be interested as well. So sometimes I reach out to some of these scholars, but I think, you see, me reaching out to them, some of them, I think it's a bit daunting for them. So they feel, I don't know how to respond. So I think it's better sometimes people who know them, that as in know them very casual. Some of these, like Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, I don't have a direct kind of, like, I don't have his WhatsApp or anything like this, and I doubt it, if I did, he would really respond to somebody like me. So now, if some of you are in touch with people like that or other scholars, why don't you just ask them? Say, ask them to come on and then set it up. I'll set it up. Cool. It sounds awesome. Some people are saying, can I come on your show? You've got to be interesting and interested. You see, the interesting, that's also important. Right, so what is going on, people? Let's take a look at Mufti. Why are you such a boss? Gio, Meri Jaan. Right, so that's going out to AR. When will you have a link up? Somebody else had asked about Nak, Nouman Ali Khan. I honestly would love to. I would love to, as soon as within a few weeks, I'd love to have Nak on. I just think right now, okay, this is my thoughts now on some, I think this is more so in America. I think it's more an American thing, but I could be wrong. I wonder what your thoughts are on this. I feel that in America, there's this, whenever something happens, some kind of like the boat is rocked with an individual. And I think there's a few different shuyukh I see this with. That I think what happens is obviously they try to cope with it, but I feel that one of the coping mechanisms is that maybe they're advised by similar people, because I've seen this at least with 3 major individuals from America. That they kind of rebrand, that they go away and they rebrand themselves. So, they could be this kind of chilled out, cool, kind of all, very kind of hip, or maybe not so hip, but very relevant, very kind of maybe appearing kind of modern, or they kind of like in touch with the young people issues, and something might happen that rocks the boat, and it rocks it severely. I don't just mean, huge on the Richter scale kind of thing for them personally. And what happens is they disappear slightly, and then they re-emerge having rebranded themselves. But their rebranding is always a very kind of like a Sufic, spiritual, very like coming back as very kind of spiritual people. And I personally don't, I would say I personally see that as a bad move. I don't see the wisdom in that. But maybe that's with, a lot of, because I've seen this with several individuals from the US now, and it's not just one, it's not just two. I mean, there at least three prominent and a few other non-prominent, like it's not huge celebrities, and I don't get what that's about. Like this whole, you see, coming back as a kind of like, I'm very, there's this like people come back very kind of Sufi, and I don't mean by Sufi as in tasawwuf, even though tasawwuf is there, but I mean the cultural, like as in like Allah wale, huge like taqwa, like kind of like muttaqi kind of presence, and everything is all about now like subhanallah and astaghfirullah, and everything's very spiritual. And you see, the issue with this is that a huge amount of the crowd that these people initially resonated with were not that crowd, because that that kind of Allah wale, that kind of scene, this kind of like Allah log scene, this like, subhanallah, I put a parna on my head, I put this kind of like a cloth over my head, I'm always like this, I dress like, I've become this whole spiritual kind of mystic, or even if it's not mystic, but this very kind of like saintly steps I'm walking in. That market is already saturated. I mean, there's like a huge, that is the common religious person. So, like, all the peers from Pakistan are like that. There's no shortage of those people. This kind of like, this huge, I carry a tasbih, or I'm like this, and I'm immersed in my tafakkur and tadabbur and tadhakkur of Allah, and I just... So the initial people who warmed, the hundreds of thousands of people who warmed to some of these people before, it was because they were more real, because they were very kind of, that they could relate to them, that their issues resonated with these people. And what happens is when they re-emerge as a different, like the bandwidth is different now, the wavelength, they're not on the same page anymore. They're not in sync with their own, that crowd. So but I've seen this in America, especially on several occasions. And I don't know what is it, like the same advisor that's going around? What is it or is this just like the normal go-to kind of quick, like the kind that everybody resorts to? Or I don't know, but I definitely do not support that. I would say if something happens, just own it. But this is why I would say never try to play the pious card anyway. See, the problem with playing a very pious card is it's too fake. Like, it's not real. And if you are going to be some Baba from, like, let's say some village in Pakistan, or some village in India, or from the deserts of Morocco or something, then fine. If you are going to be that. But if you're not, if you're going to be like, I want to live this life as well, which I would say there's nothing wrong with, live this life, be part and parcel of this world. That's what the hadith teaches you, the sunnah teaches you. But then if you're going to play very saintly figures, it's gonna, when it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash. I mean, of like biblical proportions when it crashes. So just beware of that. So, it's what's interesting is I was talking with my discussion with Sheikh Kashif, and when he was speaking about some of the great scholars of the Salaf, like Waqi', who was a great muhaddith. And it's really fascinating that how, you see, the Ahlul Iraq, the people of Iraq were huge, including Imam Abu Hanifa, on nabidh, which was an alcoholic drink. And they refused to let it go. And they like they said, this is not the alcohol of the Quran, which was wine. So, you see, to them, wine had to be, that's exactly what it had to be, wine. And that's what khamr was. And so it had to be from either dates or grapes. That's it. So other kind of alcoholic drinks that were being made from things like honey, from barley, from wheat, from these kind of things, they wouldn't class them as khamr. So Imam Abu Hanifa refused to accept that as khamr. And they said that this falls under what they used to call nabidh. And it was a drink that was mildly intoxicating, but it wasn't strongly intoxicating. So it was mildly, So if you drank loads of it, you would get some effect. But generally, like, a glass on its own, or even maybe 2 glasses, wouldn't really do much. So they said that the Sahaba used to drink this. So Imam Abu Hanifa said that I would not say this is haram if you gave me everything like if you paid me the wealth of the world, I wouldn't declare it haram. So it's really interesting. Fraudy, I see you've deleted some of Shera's messages. Don't put Shera in timeout, please. I'm sure he's definitely not a troll. So, don't avoid deleting his messages. Shukran. Right. So, right now, I was going to say, coming back to this, that look. So, Waqi', who's a great scholar, he had said on several occasions when he was a great fan of nabidh. And on certain occasions, he was invited to a wedding, and he said that, will there be nabidh there? And they said no. And he said, well, I'm not going to come then. Wow. That's the life, huh? So if there's nothing to drink, what's the point of turning up? What was the what's that? Yeah, that statement that everything is always better with alcohol. So Waqi', this was his thing, and he actually would, on several occasions, if students wanted to study hadith with him, he would actually say, okay, bring me some nabidh. And then that's the kind of like, that's what they got, that's the incentive. He'd say, if you bring me some nabidh, then cool, I'll teach you. Sagar, this is a new, Sagar Siddiqui Saab, the legend. He has his, वो कह रहे थे सागर पी लीजिए हुजूर, उनकी गुजारिशात से घबरा के पी गया. Allah, Allah, Allah. Epic, he was an epic poet. And in light of that, but this was the Salaf just being real. If you read about the actual Tabi'een, the people and those who came after them, their attitudes were very different to a lot of the people that come after. So they were very relaxed on things. In fact, they would be deemed heretics by the kind of institutionalized clergy that emerges after them. I mean, they weren't deemed heretics, most of them, but they would be if the true thing. The thing is, a lot of these kind of things about them, the scholars hid it. So the scholars refused to kind of transmit them, and that was the kind of thing that. What's the Facebook comments? Mufti, have you ever had nabith? No, but I would. आओ एक सजदा करें आलम मदहोशी में, लोग कहते हैं सागर को खुदा याद नहीं. Allah, Allah, Allah. So the, as he says that people, let's bow down into prostration whilst under the influence of this drink. People claim that sagar does not remember God. Wah, 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 wah. Right, so and Shera had asked a question about getting Hamza Ali Abassi on there. I am going to get him. I definitely, most certainly, it will be amazing. But like I was saying, give it a few weeks. I just want to make sure everything is running smooth, and then I will start setting that up, inshallah. What happened to part 2 of Dr. Ali's Mind Trap? That will be tomorrow, inshallah. Dr. Shabir Ali, I should have him on tomorrow night, hopefully, so if all goes well. Have you read much on Native American tribes? I haven't actually, no. I mean, it's fascinating. I've read up a bit on the, the Central American and South American historical kind of tribes and civilizations. A lot of that in relation to Graham Hancock and the lost chapters of human civilization. I've been very intrigued by that. So I have read up there, that kind of stuff. All right, so what else is going on? Do you believe Aqidah Tahawiyah? You see, Aqidah Tahawiyah, you see, the problem, you open my mind on many things. Bless you, Mufti. Yamina, right? May Allah bless you. May He bless us all. Ameen. Huh? Yamina, is that like Yamna? Ganga, Yamna, Saraswati. The Yamna is the river that runs by Delhi. Right, by the Taj Mahal, I believe. So, right, so what's the pit system and sending money? No idea, but you can send a super chat. Feel free to send it. Mufti, how did you get a fresh trim in a lockdown? The Lord provides. Seek and ye shall find. Allah, Allah, Allah. So what is bothering me, gente? Mufti, bring on Bro Haji on Mind Trap. I have actually reached out to Bro Haji, and he said he would love to come on, but it's just that he's been really busy. He's been really busy trying to sort out his own videos. He's doing videos every day, and his videos are, I think he has to actually edit them afterwards. Like, I run a software, so once my video's over, it's over. I just, it's live. But he has to edit them, then chop them up, fix them up, then upload them. So he's really, I think, caught up on that. But yeah, I would love to get him on, inshallah. Mufti, what happened to the video about Muawiyah radiallahu an? I don't know what happened. I hope nothing's happened to it. Not Yamna, but Yamina. Awesome name. Right, bring on Alyas Karmani. Sure, I mean, I'm happy to bring anybody on that's interesting and interested. What's you skipped my question, bruv. Alright, bruv. What's your question, bruv? Alright, so what's your views on what is your opinion on Mustafa Kemal Ataturk? Okay, that's an interesting one. Let me just, there's a question here by Salem 313. 303. We will hang you till no, that was Anil Kapoor from Ramlakan. This Salam Mufti 313. This is the brigade of Badr. Although it's not actually established as 313, but it is a popular number. Mufti, looking slick. Could you elaborate on Maliki's not paying zakat on gold? Does it apply to gold for investment or gold owned by businesses? Right, so the school of Medina and other schools as well, like the Shafi'i madhab, they don't recognize zakat on jewelry or on gold assets like that, because to them this was never something a person had to give zakat on. It was only zakat was given on things which are kind of deemed currency. I mean, I suppose even though that has value, but it's not kind of in a state of currency, if you like. So even though you own a house and a house is wealth, but the home that you're living in or that you own is not in a state of currency. So therefore, it's not part of this zakat concept or system. That has been the school of Medina, that has been Imam Malik's understanding, that because Imam Malik said that, look, I live here in Medina. He said that the people, my teachers, they learnt from their fathers, who learnt from their fathers, who learnt from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam right here in Medina. And we don't give zakat on jewelry. And to me, that just did it. You know what? There's no comeback to that. See, this is why the amal, the practice of the people of Medina, to me was such a compelling kind of argument. Yeah. Right, so shukran for that. Alright, what is going down? Let me get, can non-Muslims, shukran for all the love and support, people. Zebaji, shukran. As always, I've got to say, a very consistent watches all my mind traps, like a few like others as well, but I dearly appreciate it. Always live, regardless, in spite of, let me put that, in spite of my incredibly awkward vampire hours, yet you guys show so much love. Shukran. What do you think of Heidegger's philosophy on time? Heidegger's philosophy on time, you're gonna have to remind me the key aspect there. Take my cash. Can you please do a recommended reading list? It'd be fun to go through a few reads during quarantine. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I'm going through a few reads myself as it is. My books are actually downstairs. The ones I just finished a novel. I mean, it's not a novel, but it's a non-fiction story. It's called The Salt Path. I began it last year, actually, and then just got distracted and never went back to it. But I picked it up and I thought, you know, I need to finish it. And I finished it just this week gone. And it was an amazing... I mean, it's very interesting because it's about this couple who are slightly elderly. Maybe, they're in their 50s and... everything, the world has come crashing down on them. The husband is diagnosed with some terminal illness, and their home has been repossessed, and they've lost everything. They had this farm and this is just right from the offset, so I'm not ruining anything. And what happens is they don't know what to do with life, and they suddenly get this idea to go on this walk, to walk the south coast of England, over 600 miles, and then the struggles they face during that kind of travel, the difficulties, they wild camp, the cash issues, the food, starvation, and because it's a real life story, it's really intriguing. What I found very interesting, and this is something I can't, they struggle, may Allah make things easy for them, they're still alive, but I feel that, and may Allah make things easy for anybody going through these kind of issues of homelessness and stuff like that. But what I found incredibly interesting was this concept of tawakkul. that they had, that this kind of divine, but they never had it in a divine, like they weren't saying it's God. But you see, I saw it as that because in my life, I deeply kind of rely on this sense of tawakkul. I know it sounds crazy, but I do. As an individual, I mean, people who know me very closely, like my very near and dear friends, select few, the kind that I absolutely chill with, I travel with, that kind. That they will see that I do have a kind of, you see, to certain people, I have a carelessness in my approach to life in certain things, and like almost in money matters and stuff like this. But deep down, that is actually based, in my understanding, on a lot of tawakkul that Allah will always just give. And I know it sounds crazy to people from from a distance, and I can't explain how it will work that way, but it's just a faith. But I feel, and this is why there is a hadith that I find incredibly interesting on these matters, and that is that where the Prophet gives the parable of the birds and their trust in divine providence. Although it's just a parable, I mean, birds are not thinking this, but that they set off from their nests with no idea where they will find their providence that day. They have no idea that where their food has kind of will be, that what will they bring back for their kind of in the nest for their offspring, for the kind of children that they've got, the little. Yet they find it every day. They find something. And the Prophet is giving an example of sheer and pure tawakkul upon Allah. And somebody had mentioned a hadith, Umar, is this not, is the 70,000 people without account going to Jannah Sahih hadith? You see, I would feel that hadith was simply highlighting this same thing that I'm saying now. It wasn't, and first of all, it wasn't a set number. The Arabs used to use 70 just to mean countless, and when you add thousands to it, it means like an incredible amount of people. That what it's trying to say is that people will find their true salvation in this kind of tawakkul upon Allah. That look, this kind of don't worry, it will work out. That that Allah, that He will kind of catch you. So yeah, I definitely would definitely advise trying to, because in the West sometimes we forget this. It becomes very distant. Handsome hound, you're doing it. Quran says not to hold ties with Kafir women. God, what's this? Why are you trying to block people from other women? That Quran says not to hold ties with Kafir women, and some people of the book are called Kafir. So can we marry women of the book? Yes, we can. I mean, look, this whole thing, the Quran, this verse, وَلَا تُمْسِكُوا بِعِسَمِ الْكَوَافِرِ, that do not hold on to the wrists of the disbelieving women. It had a context to it. Yeah, it wasn't just, even the actual verses around it highlighted. It's to do with the people who have migrated, the Muhajirin. They've come to Medina and they've left behind in Mecca many, they've left behind people, family, wealth, wives, children. I mean, people, husbands, people have left behind this kind of stuff. And there were certain occasions where people were kind of still longing, like they were in a state of limbo. They didn't have closure that the relationship's over, and their wives were still very clearly not interested in embracing the faith and nor migrating. So these people weren't too sure whether to kind of move on. On one side, they're kind of thinking of moving on with their lives. On the other hand, they're thinking, well, you know, what should we do here? We've got this and these people, and we've got property and other things. And the people of Mecca had confiscated, by the way, their properties. And even the women had kind of remarried as well. So they were addressed that وَلَا تُمْسِكُوا بِعِسَمِ الْكَوَافِرِ, that look, don't kind of hold on to this, to these kind of the wrists. That story, that chapter has gone. You know, it's over. Like, you need to move. What is important is what is in front of you. This was the context. It was not trying to say disbelieving women as a whole, as a kind of collective, because if that's the case, why were they intermarrying with disbelieving women within Medina? They were, because there were many settled Jewish tribes. There were many Christian women. Some did embrace Islam, some didn't. So yeah. Alright, Monday nights makes me so happy. Shukran, shukran. Ibn Kathir, Mufti, will we meet our family members in heaven? Yeah, I mean, look, my understanding, what is the afterlife? Do any of us ever truly know what it is? I would feel that it's not what we are imagining here at all. And if anything, it's more linked to kind of consciousness. But we just won't fathom that. And I get that. And this is why I feel the verse of the Quran, that وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, that when they ask you about the ruh, which I understand to mean consciousness, Allah is saying that you've only, you know, attained a very brief, like you've not been given much true factual knowledge of it, except a small amount that you guys have. This is like a great unknown consciousness. So yeah. Right, what are your thoughts on right, okay, can we discuss Chaudhry Walid? Alright, Imam Qadhi, how's it going? Somebody's asked, Mufti, was Ibn Kathir an extremist and problematic in general? Right, we've got two other questions here. Let's just take them before they move on and disappear. Azhar Muhammad, can you give zakat to someone with them, you know, damn people, with them not knowing it's zakah? Alright, ghetto. This is called ghetto zakat. And Inaya, ahlan wa sahlan. Do you think we have galactic fams? Starseed Connect. It's an interesting question. And the Hanafi is totally opposite of today. Yep, that's by Handsome Hound. You're doing it. Right, so there's so many fascinating questions here. Look, first of all, can we give zakat to someone without them knowing it's zakat? Of course you can. You don't need to say, yeah, this is zakat. And you know, the problem today is zakat has become like a dirty word. It was simply a mechanism that was being put in place as a welfare system. That's all, like to help people. But it's become this kind of like, yeah, you know, this is zakat. You know, it's the upper hand and the person asking is the lower hand. And you do not need to tell people that this is zakat. And during my Mind Trap episode with Sheikh Kashif, we discussed that what about where governments take taxes, can that constitute zakat? And it's interesting, I mean, he was of the opinion it can, and I know Allama Javed Ghamdi Saab is of the same opinion that it can. And it's interesting, he was highlighting that that some people from the Salaf were of that kind of view. Right, so restricted to the classical meanings. For instance, in India, the Muslim kings married Rajput princesses to the dismay of many on both sides. Yeah, it's interesting that, there's certain scholars. I actually would feel that the Indians today, the Hindus today, um, or people of India, or of the world by and large, but let's just say because somebody's asking about India, I would consider that they would take the same ruling as people of the book. I would agree with those scholars. There was a great Salafi scholar, Ahlul Hadith scholar of India, of modern day kind of, he would fall in Pakistan, Badi Zaman. Now, his fatwa, and he had written, was that the Indians and the Hindus of our age are people of the book, even though we don't necessarily, we may not agree with the kind of books that they have today, but we would feel that in the past it is very likely that people like Krishna and these kind of people were prophets inspired by God. I mean, that's very likely. In fact, if you read about people like Ram and Krishna, that they, especially Krishna, that you will read that a lot of, in the early kind of Vedic tradition, he's deemed a scholar. He's kind of seen as this incredibly wise scholar, and later on slightly deified, and not slightly, later on deified by other later generations, but by the early generations he's seen as this kind of wise scholar. And I think that that's so he had argued that the same way the Prophet said about the Majus, because the Majus, if you think about it, Zarathusht, this Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, as you want to say, Zoroaster in Greek. But the thing was that he, this whole teaching of Ahura Mazda and this whole thing of God, and these two kind of entities of darkness and evil is almost parallel to God. This is very antithetical to Islam, to monotheism. But yet the Prophet said, "Amiluhum mu'amalata ahlil kitab," treat them like the people of the book. Why? Because that their early teachings were divinely inspired, even though their millah is entirely different from the Abrahamic reason-based millah. And the millah of the people of India traditionally is a mystical kind of millah. It's not one based on reason. And I would feel that it was also divinely inspired, even though today it may not appear that way, but to many Muslims. So I would agree with that great Ahlul Hadith scholar, Sheikh Badi'u Zaman, and others who've said that the Ahlul Hind, the Hindus, we would treat them, we give them the same hukm as Ahlul Kitab. And that would mean, and I've got a detailed video on the Nikkah would be valid, even though if people weren't happy with the Nikkah, but bi aslihi, it wouldn't be batil. Some might describe it as fasid, of not having met certain conditions, but I would argue that it would still be valid. I hope that helps. Right, the question on aliens and things like this, it's possible. It is possible that there's some kind of alien life form. It doesn't have to be. Yeah, and somebody said, Abbas said DMT inspired. I would feel that, yeah, things like DMT, it's a shame Muslims are not on it with these kind of things, honestly. We are missing out hugely, I feel, that this is a huge, because okay, check this out, people. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine you were setting up the cosmos, or forget the cosmos, you're setting up the globe for creation, for people, humans. You would leave certain signs in there, and certain maybe kind of cheat portals. If I can give it that. Like, imagine you're designing a virtual game. People tend to leave a kind of like a cheat in there. They tend to leave certain portals, certain things that are like game changers in a certain way. And where else would you leave them? You wouldn't leave like a kind of like a digital device, which only would be understandable by certain languages and certain civilizations, and others wouldn't have access. You would leave it like in an even plane that everybody would have access to this, regardless of language, culture. And where else would you leave it? You would leave it in nature. But who would have thought you'd have to lick a toad? But I'm serious. I think that there's a huge thing here that not the Abraham, because Christians and some Judaic, some Jewish kind of people, scholars have kind of embraced this, but I feel Muslims have really missed out, unfortunately. Somebody said Mufti's been playing. Oh, Billy's in the house, doing it. People, if you are stuck in this lockdown and you need a man with a van to you're still allowed, I take it. So if you need things being moved, Billy's your man right there. Bilal Riley, Facebook, hook him up. Right, so what do we think about this whole thing of these Maulvis in Pakistan have made an announcement? They have said, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the mosques. We do not give a damn. Right, we do not give a damn. We're going to open up the mosques. What is that? What is this about, people? And this defiance, this kind of hubristic, this kind of like arrogant defiance of the state. Right, Kapil, you've asked a question. I'll come to that in a moment. Honestly, I think that the mullahs, these Maulvis, have lost the plot. Honestly, I so struggle to relate. This is the disappointing thing, and I'm a mufti. I mean, I'm a mufti, for God's sake, and I struggle so much to be able to relate to any of these. I cannot relate to these people, honestly. Not just in this issue, generally. We are like worlds apart. And I think to myself that how can religion survive on the back of these people? It can't. I'm telling you, this is a drowning ship. This is why I think whilst aboard this ship, we need to kind of craft our own little ship and set about our own salvation, because these people are going to drown everyone with us. I'm telling you, and I tell you that these mullahs that are these Maulvis, and people like they've all got together, and this is the irony. They all got together, these different sects. They hate each other's guts. They can't stand each other, call each other kafirs. Then they sit together just to kind of be kind of defiant. Oh, we're gonna, and what they do is we're gonna open the mosques. We've made a statement, like telling the government that don't you dare stop us. And the governments are really scared on matters of religion, because people, the public is sometimes as dumb as these people when it comes to religion. Like anything they think is religious, they apply so much sentiment to it, and they just kind of the whole thing. So people, Mufti Taqi, and I'm going to be honest with you, I am so disappointed in general with Mufti Taqi as of late. Maybe before he was okay, but I feel that recently, in the last few years, Mufti Taqi Saab is, I don't know, to me, he's just been really disappointing. Mufti Taqi is probably watching this thinking, huh? He's giving that kind of look like, what the hell? Right, so, but it's true, man. I don't know what's happened to, and it's interesting. I was discussing with Sheikh Kashif, and I've discussed with other people as well, that look, just think about this, people. We need to seriously analyze society, Muslim societies, because it's only been a few decades that Muslims have become like this, to this extent. Like, if you take these very countries like India, Pakistan, the Arab world, you go back to the 70s, the 60s, they were not like this. I mean, take Pakistan as an example. You had people like Parvez from the Quranist movement. I mean, what they call the Ahlul Quran, the people of the Quran, he utterly denied hadith. He lived in Pakistan. I think he was in Lahore. He taught. He had I think he had an institution or a place to teach from. He wrote books, several books. He lectured. He did, and he died a natural death. I mean, he outright, categorically denied all hadith. You had people like I'm saying this, Maulana Badi'uz Zaman is preaching about, look, the Indians are Ahlul Kitab. You had, who I quote often, Maulana Abdul Karim Athari, who was in, I think he was in Gujar Khan, or is it, I think it was Gujar Khan or Gujranwala, I don't, but he was in the Punjab in Pakistan. He was a khatib. He used to give the day, the Friday sermons. He wrote a tafsir. His teacher that had lived there previously, Allama Inayatullah Shah Gujarati, Wazirabadi, they had preached things like, they said that naturalistic explanations about miracles. They had said there was no such thing as a virgin birth of Jesus alayhi salam. They'd said there was no second coming of Jesus. They'd said there was, and they wrote. I mean, his teacher, Allama Inayatullah Shah Wazirabadi, he has a book called Uyun Zamzam fi Wiladat ibn Maryam, where he wrote this book, and it's a brief book. It's available on script. It's in Urdu, where he writes that, look, Isa alayhi salam had a natural birth, that his father was Yusuf al-Najjar, Joseph the carpenter. And these people lived, they preached, they taught, they had gatherings, and they died a natural death in countries like Pakistan. This, Maulana Abdul Karim, I think, died in the 70s. You see, something in Pakistan in the last few decades changed. And I'm telling you, it is to do with this Afghan war. It was to do with the Mujahideen movement. It was to do with the funding that came from the CIA to kind of support this jihad movement. So the madrasas got heavily funded to produce Mujahideen. Saudi Arabia was on it, the Arab world were on it. America was happy just to stop the communist war, the communist kind of invasion. They did not want them to advance. So at any cost necessary, they flooded in money. If you watch the movie about Charlie Wilson's war, and it's all about this. So they flooded in so much money to promote this Russo-Afghan kind of, and it wasn't just about Afghanistan, but it was about the mentality, and the only way they could do it was they had to breed, metaphorically, a generation of people that were kind of drowning in jihad. And they really they went OTT. All in bringing out anything they could, all this literature. All the young students, the khutbahs, the madrasas were extremely oriented around jihad. Everything is about jihad. The otherness of the kafir became so highlighted, and the contrast became so sharp. So you're not going to get people like... where before you had people like Sheikh Badi'uz Zaman, from the Ahlul Hadith movement saying, oh, Hindus are Ahlul Kitab. But now Hindus are the other, the Kafir. They are, and the Russians are the Kafir, and we have to do jihad, and we have to have a hatred. Because you see, it's not easy to tell somebody to go and kill people. You see, if you're sitting there and somebody said to you, hey, go and kill those people, that ain't easy. To take life is not easy. What you have to do is you have to dehumanize the other in the eyes of this person. You have to make this person feel that that person is not even really a human being. He doesn't deserve life. And this is what this Russo-Afghan project did, this kind of jihad, mujahideen era. And it triggered the kind of backlash in Kashmir, obviously the rise of the Mujahideen there. It triggered, and against India, all these kind of harakat came about. Harakatul Jihadul Islami, Harakatul Tahriq, I don't know, the Taliban was born out of this much later. But the Jaish-e-Muhammad, what is it, Lashkar-e-Taiba, these are much slightly later movement, but they all born out of this mentality. That kill, kafirs are najas, kafirs need to be, and you see, they need to kind of almost roboticize these people, turn them into these robots in order to execute these kind of missions of killing people. And then what happens is, as you approach the 90s, the Russia-Afghan war comes to an end. Okay, that's ended. But we've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions. We've got millions of bloodthirsty, religiously driven, zealot Muslims now that are left behind, that are the byproduct of the, but they're still there. You know, they've set up madrasas. Like, what are they're gonna, they further invested in these madrasas, have been teaching further, they've been kind of gathering students, because what do you do with these people now? You know, you raise a kind of, the way these people think is like a fascist way of thinking. You raise a generation of them, and they give speeches upon speeches upon speeches. Right, so, and then you decide, okay, we're going to, you know, like, okay, like the America, okay, we're not going to fund you, Russian-Afghan war is over. And you know, this is, Noam Chomsky speaks so much about this. And he is another gem that Muslims have, because of our blinkers, we haven't really benefited from. So, all this hatred against the kuffar is a byproduct of really of just this funding by, you know, the CIA and the US government, just as a proxy war against Russia. And then you're left with Osama bin Laden and this era of mujahideen. So we've got such a mishmash, and it's going to take now like a few generations to try and get back to some kind of sanity. If we can, because now the whole public has been kind of brainwashed with this mentality. Because they've just grown up, they've been to Jummah khutbahs, even though they're not religious, but they've just heard these things as being normal. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the whole thing is. Somebody asked, is it wrong to fight in Kashmir? You see, it's not about the fighting, the resistance. You know, the resistance is a fight for freedom, and they have every right for that. But what happened in Kashmir was slightly beyond the resistance. You have to be real, that you see this kind of vile hatred of Hindus was injected into the, you know, in the early 90s, the Brahmin and the way that the uprising against the Brahmins, the way the Muslims, then the Mujahideen tortured them. They killed them, raped their women, exiled them. I mean, most of them fled from Kashmir. This should never have happened. Like something like this, that's not freedom. You know, I tell you, wallahi, you know, people, this is the kind of thing that triggers me. I've mentioned before, look at when the British had colonized India. Read up on these things. There were so many legends, and amongst them Muslims, people like Ashfaqullah Khan. Now, Ashfaqullah Khan, when the British when they were going to execute him, because they eventually caught him, before he put the noose on around his neck, he said, all praise be to God, that never have I wrongly shed blood. like in defense, and we did these things. Like they used to hijack, I mean, they used to kind of steal the assets and things like this to support the uprising against the British colonialists. But he said, I've never kind of perpetrated what is murder. And you read these and you think, real men of a true resistance. That this is this not what the hadith taught? Is this not what the Prophet ﷺ said? That he said, I will guarantee salvation so long as you do not have blood on your hands. And what's happened is, it's not about freedom. Freedom is a must, but it's this virus that has kind of infected the minds of people. It's kind of taken root and it's kind of spread this hatred, that you deeply hate the other person, that you can't stand them, that you dehumanize them, you want to, and then you commit atrocities. So absolutely, what the atrocities against the Kashmiri people are utterly unacceptable. What the Indian army, the occupation, is so heavy-handed, and it is nothing short of a fascist occupation. And I 100% condemn it. But on the same token, I will admit that yes, the Mujahideen era did breed a very hateful bunch of people who, when they had an opportunity, did also commit ruthless atrocities against the Hindu citizens, just because they had some momentary power. Yeah, so this is the thing, really, people, and I tell you that this is what we have to be wary, that when you fight monsters, you cannot become a monster. And this is what Nietzsche was kind of going on about, that look, that when you fight monsters, most people end up becoming the monsters. Right, so cool. I hope that, I know I kind of went off there, but I just felt it's so relevant, really, and I wish people would investigate that what happened to the Muslim world during the 80s or the late 70s, early 80s, going into the 90s. It destroyed everything. I mean, we are still suffering because of that. Cool, people, let's take somebody had asked a question: if two people, non-Muslims, got married, did they need to, Kapil had asked it, do they need to redo their Nikkah if they both convert? They don't need to, know. So during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, people who converted to Islam, they were never asked to renew their Nikkah. So the Prophet never said to people, so many tribes did embrace Islam. The Prophet never said, oh, right, everybody renew your Nikkah and do things like this. In fact, even the Prophet's daughter, when her husband came, when her husband Al-As came to visit her in Medina after so many years, and then they reconciled. It had been years of separation. He was a Kafir. He hadn't embraced Islam. Yet the Prophet never said about renewing a Nikkah. Everybody deserves freedom. Regarding a couple had made a statement the last few minutes and still going is beautiful words by you. Shukran. I appreciate everyone is a human being and needs to talk in this way. We are all human. Everyone deserves freedom regardless of faith. Absolutely. I really envisage, I dream of a world which I think it is not only possible, it will happen, where that you can have these freedoms, you can have your liberties, you have your birthrights regardless of your faith, and that you can be different but not hate the other. You see, this is the difference, that you can differentiate between you and the other. You can dislike sometimes. Like, look, I speak to certain, I speak to several. I have non-Muslim friends. I have, people from a variety. I will sometimes see something that their view on Islam, and I may dislike it as a person, that view. Obviously, it may make me feel, let's say, slightly uncomfortable with it, like what they're saying, or they're cracking some jokes. And I have a huge sense of humor. So I'm always on these meme pages following them. And I see that and I'll laugh along most of the time. Sometimes I might think, oh, but it's not. You see, you can dislike a thing without having to hate the person. And I think that's important. Right. Right, it's time again. All right, what's going on? What are some of the questions? So, people, somebody asked, were you ever a Salafi or extremely strict Muslim at one point in your life? I was extremely strict. I wasn't a Salafi, although I may have looked like one. But, when I first started to take the deen very seriously, I took it too seriously. So I must have been I was still a teenager, late teens, approaching the late teens. And so probably around 17, going into 18, even at that kind of time, when I took this religion, took it as in like, I want to learn this, I want to, this is really important. I took it very seriously. And I had an approach which would be a very hardline approach. Because I didn't know any better. I thought everything is almost haram and you can't do this, you can't do that. I ended up, because my family weren't really religious, they weren't really practicing in that. In fact, they weren't praying or anything. And although they respected Islam, obviously, were Muslim, but they weren't in that way, kind of, the things I was viewing was too much for them. So I was like, TV is haram. Obviously, in my parents' house, I couldn't throw the TV out, but if it was up to me, I would have. And I was very, I didn't like sometimes some of the way, like, my younger sisters would go about and I'd think, oh, this is wrong and this is haram. And so really, it was just this kind of way of looking at the world. And I took this very ascetic approach. I mean, within a year, probably a year, and then I had left the country because I went off to study. So I was only going through, this phase probably lasted about 2 years, but 2.5 years maybe. But the latter part, or more than half of it, probably about 60% of it was abroad. Alhamdulillah. So it was, so it mitigated some of the damage. But I used to do all these things like, you shouldn't have luxuries in life. You should dress simple. You should. This is how dumb it is, guys. You can probably think of. I'm embarrassed to say this now, but it's true. Like for example, let's say I thought that to sleep on the bed is luxurious, and this is not how the Sahaba used to do things. They would sleep simply. So I had a sleeping bag. I would just kind of sleep on the carpet. In my bedroom. I wouldn't kind of use the mattress and things like this, and I restricted because this is what I was being told, you see. And obviously I was like only 17, and I was being told that this is how the Salaf did it, and if you truly love Islam, you will do it. I had I remember for my hair, I had I don't know if I had this thing, we used to call it an under kind of step. So it was like an undercut. So I had long hair, which came down all the way, but it was an undercut right up into here. So I don't know what they'll call it today, but that's the kind of hair I used to have as when I was that age. So somebody told me this is haram. So I just went to the barbers, and I said, you know what, take it all off. So I just went bold. But this was my conviction and my kind of submission to what I thought was the faith. And this is why I can relate to people when I see it. When I see people going through this and they look at me and they say, you deviant, you've lost the plot, I fear for your akhirah, you're going to go to hell, you've made all these people, dal, mudil, dalala, gumrahi, whatever. And I kind of like laugh at it, but it's because I've been through it. I mean, thank God I went through it as a kid. So I kind of grew out of it. And I didn't go through it as a grown man because it would have been bloody crazy. I mean, I just think how I would have turned my life upside down if I went through it at a stage like this. So, but I do understand what they're going through, and I think like, वाह, कभी हम भी किया करते थे ऐसा. Don't worry, I think you'll grow out of it. But it's not that. But I'm so glad I did experience it, so I know what people are going through. Yeah, so if that makes any sense. Cool. Alright, so what is going down? Was Ibn Kathir an extremist? I don't think he was an extremist in that sense, but if you know, some of his views might be a bit weird today, by today's understanding. You see, he was, in some things he was strange, and you've got to recognize that. I suppose he was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Taymiyyah was very kind of, he had a rage inside him as well. I mean, sometimes you get that. You see, you got to understand the individual. He struggled and was imprisoned for a huge part of his life, and those kind of prisons were, you know, if you've been to prison today, this is a luxury compared to those prisons. You were just chucked in this bloody dungeon. I mean, it's not a laughing matter, and you just lingered there, you know. And he was there for years. I mean, you'd lose the plot. So you can understand sometimes, and the reason I'm explaining that is to sometimes understand where that bitterness in Ibn Taymiyyah is coming from, because he's very bitter sometimes against people and very kind of harsh, and I think that's where it came from, this kind of trauma. Right, Tahir, the realness is appreciated. Also, right, I missed. Also, keep up the general critique. Mufti's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, which he's currently wearing. Shukran, Tahir, shukran. There's a quote by, comment by Mahin, you're doing it. Mufti, amazed you mentioned atrocities. Many consider it genocide committed against Kashmiri Pandits by Pak Kashmiri Muslims. Hats off to you. Absolutely. I'm utterly, I'm disgusted by what the Muslims did to the Hindu Pandits in Kashmir. It's utterly unacceptable. But I do, at the same time, I'm disgusted by what the Indian Army is doing. But just because the Indian Army is doing it, it doesn't mean that when Muslims do it, we turn a blind eye and pretend, oh, it's okay. It's not okay. You know, you did exactly the same. You know, you did, when you were given an opportunity, you killed, murdered, raped, all this kind of stuff, and looted. I mean, that's not on, you know, under any, and you used Islam to justify it, which disgusts me even more, because, like, I would feel that in some ways the Hindu army are just simply they're not using a religion to justify it, they're just using the kind of military power they've been given, and that too, it's not been officially sanctioned, but people turn a blind eye, and they're the ones holding the gun, so they're gonna bully people, and they're gonna. But you guys not only did it, but you used Islam to say it's okay, and that obviously kind of hurts me that happened. Yeah. Mufti, would you consider setting up a WhatsApp group? You know what it is? WhatsApp groups are great. There's only a few WhatsApp groups I'm ever on. I mean, one is the chill out kind of my own, the lads banter. That's the only real group. See, these WhatsApp groups and me, we've got a twisted history. I got into almost some serious trouble once because of this, because my sense of humor, WhatsApp groups, the stuff people send, this one not nice, you know, this combination is muy peligroso. It's very dangerous. Right, thoughts on Assim al-Hakeem is too extreme. Peace verse have been abrogated by the violent verse. Is it true that the peace verse of the Quran has been abrogated by the violence verse? No, I don't believe so. Not at all. You see, the Quran, Islam is not a pacifist religion. You know, if you're going to ask me, look, is Islam a pacifist religion? I would be straightforward. I'll be very real with you. Islam is not pacifist. You see, me as an individual, I wouldn't consider myself a pacifist. Like, you know, that I would feel that nothing ever would justify violence. It would in defense, you see, because at the end of the day, if somebody is not going to listen, if they're not going to, and I don't mean somebody's not going to listen like you're preaching to them, they're not going to listen, but I mean the law. If they're not going to obey it, there must be some enforced, you know, kind of reality. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So, if I was running a nation, I would definitely believe in having military might. Because at the end of the day, it's an irony that, look, nuclear strength, check the irony, people. Isn't this amazing? That nuclear strength has for once brought about the prospect of global peace. You see, because when the guns got that big, people have to now think. Everybody has to be calm. I mean, it's absolutely Socratic, the irony that we reached such levels, such capacity of devastation, that from it emerges an unprecedented peace. And so I definitely would say that, look, Islam is not a pacifist faith. You know, if you try and screw it over as an entity, as a civilization, it would have not only an army, it would have a mighty kind of a military aspect to it, because it has in it the backdrop for these kind of things. You will find these kind of verses encouraging you to stand up, don't take being bullied. In fact, even the verse that you're speaking of says, "Udhina lilladhina dhulimu," that those people who are being oppressed, God, it has now been permitted for you to stand up. Take up arms if you have to defend yourself. And because cowardice is never on. You see, if you're just going to be a coward and just take people bullying you, that never cuts. It encourages the bully to go further. So Islam is not something like a pacifist monk kind of religion, but it's not a religion of war. This is wrongly interpreted by certain people because they've taken out these aspects and then just said, oh, it's all about war. It's not. Right, so if someone doesn't listen, Guriya. Khadim was saying, Rizvi, how often is Mind Trap? Mind Trap is as often as I can get it. So hopefully it's going down tomorrow. We're going to have Sheikh Dr. Shabir Ali on, unless something comes up, but hopefully he's all booked. Right, so if there's any right, there was a question. There was a question on... there were quite a few questions. I thought they were interesting. Right, Assim al Hakeem, my thoughts on him. I just think Assim al Hakeem is a nutcase. Sometimes I think, does he do what he does as a parody? Is it like a... Does he do it for... you know, if he was a parody, it would be awesome. But his kind of views of Islam... What's amazing is how people follow him. People that are born and raised in places like America, UK, Europe, Canada, these people follow him. You think, wow. You know, wow. You know, I don't know. We need more kind of real people. Yeah. That's what we need. Somebody had asked about reincarnation. Reincarnation, you see, it's interesting. There have been a very small minority of Muslim scholars that have entertained the concept of reincarnation, but not in a way that, like, it's slightly different to like how Hindu reincarnation and things like that. that what some of these scholars felt was that maybe they understood that the ruh is what is it's external. It's not this. So okay, to many Muslims, they've taken this kind of whole Aristotelian kind of this whole thing of the ruh is this kind of gaseous element that lives within us. This, you know how Ghazali presents it, it's this kind of spirit, this kind of ghost that lives within. So my ruh is a ghost that looks like me. This is what Imam Ghazali writes in his reply. So this kind of view, obviously many people hold this, which I totally do not believe in. But that view is different. In this view that your ruh is you, it's just a ghost version of you that resides within the physical version of you, and both of them together kind of move around and do stuff. Now, according to other understandings, and the truer understanding of the Quran wouldn't really reflect this ghost version. It would just mean that the ruh is something that we have access to. And it, in essence, was from God. So, now, according to some of these scholars, I think there's Ibn Khatib and there's a few people that have been quoted to have said, some people have argued, even Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah has argued this, but I've read some secondary references to Ibn Qayyim saying this, but I haven't managed to find him actually saying it yet, which maybe he has, but I haven't found it yet. But there's some other people as well who've entertained this view that if the ruh is something which the human is tapping into, it may be that the same version, if you like, or that same connection later taps into other humans, so thereby connecting their arwah. And then they used verses like you know, this, because there's several verses in the Quran, things like where Allah says, and he has, you know, and you were dead before, and then he gave you life, and then he'll give you death, and then he'll give you life. So they understood these verses to then say that that's what it's referring to. Or there's verses like لا يذوقون فيها إلا الموتة الأولى, that they only ever taste the first death, to mean that it was several kind of times. And you know the hadith that the arwah are like bands are grouped together, and that those arwah, those ruhs that knew each other before, when they meet again later on, they get on, and those that didn't, and that's in Sahih Bukhari, they kind of have an aversity, you know, they averse, they don't like each other, there's a tension. Now, you see, this for most people have said, well, the arwah, you see, so what this led many Muslim scholars to do was create a kind of like not a reincarnation, but a pre-incarnation state. So many Muslim scholars believe in a kind of pre-incarnation state, if I can call it that, which they call alamul arwah. So these ghost figures, like, let's say my ghost used to live there looking like me before I was born. And he used to get on with other ghosts. And then the ones he knew, and I find this so dumb, but yeah, a lot of people believe this, that's the one that when I bump into those people in the world, I get on with them. But what those scholars felt is that this was talking about that reincarnated connection. So the ruh, when it connected with this body, it kind of gave it this mind and consciousness. And if it connected to another body, it would, even though it would be a new experience, a new person, it wouldn't really, but that ruh, the arwah it had connected with, this person would get on with. And I find this, just as a discussion, incredibly fascinating. But it is very different, even those ulama who did, and I think more so it was held by some of the Ismailis, it was held, I think, quite widely. Some of them held this kind of a belief. And then there were other scholars as well in between. Some are named from Ahl Sunnah, like I mentioned, Ibn Qayyim's named, and several others are named. Surprisingly, I've read loads of references of names, but I'm still yet to find, I'm still researching this area. But I don't think it's in any way kufr, that belief that these scholars have held to. I think it's just different. It's not, maybe most people don't believe it, but it's not the kind of Hindu reincarnation that it's the same person who's starting again as a different person, and then he comes back as a rock. And what's interesting is the Arabs, they used to call incarnation nasakh, and they used to call when you're reincarnated, this was from Jahiliyyah, as an animal, masakh. And they used to call, so there's 4 states, that to a human, to an animal, to a plant, and to an object like a stone. So they called it nasakh, masakh, fasakh, and rasakh. Ah, you Arabs. You can see the irony is the sin and the kha get reincarnated in all of them. And you see, this is the so when it comes in the hadith, which by the way I believe are false hadith, that the Bani Israel had maskh done to them, that they were kind of turned into these, and they lived on as generations of monkeys and so on, and that's not actually true like that. But yeah, so these people, yeah, but anyway, not to get totally distracted, it's interesting. This whole thing about the ruh is very fascinating. Right, let's take some other. Sheikh, can I get a 20-minute call with you? I want to discuss about Dajjal and the return of Isa. Mufti, are reading prophecies from astrologers such as Nostradamus haram? Right, reading prophecies are not haram. They're not haram. I mean, it's interesting that some people they have certain visions sometimes that they may materialize, and that is fascinating. And sometimes it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and sometimes it could just be mysterious events. And I don't know how that exactly works, but I do find it very intriguing. What I would say is, if you study these things from a perspective of curiosity, it's fine, but don't kind of adopt these things as superstition. You see, beware of superstition. If Islam came for one thing, one key factor, you could say, but to kind of like to make the on the ground difference, it would have been to eliminate superstition. Somebody said, where is he getting these questions from? They're on YouTube. People are posting these questions. Mufti, thoughts on looking in the sky whilst praying? The hadith says that you go blind. No, that's not true. You can look around, although really you should try and focus. See, the irony is that in the real sunnah of salah is you look straight ahead. You don't actually look down. And this is why in the school of Medina, they actually say you generally look ahead. So you're just kind of standing there. But I find that so distracting. And this is why some of the people said, why don't you just look at the place of sujood then? It's a point of concentration. And Qadhi from the Malikiyah says it. And the Hanafi madhab said, look, why don't you just look at the place of sujood? And I kind of agree with them. It helps focus. Mufti, do you support Imran Khan PTI? I do indeed. Imran Khan, I feel, is a legend. Right, sometimes he answers Facebook questions. I do as well. I am looking at Facebook questions. Mufti, you are in my Ruh's army. Hell yeah, hell yeah. It's amazing that you sometimes do meet people and you feel that you kind of gel so well with certain people. It is amazing that you do, it makes you think these kind of hadith that, wow, that some people you just gel well with. Male and female, men and women. And this is, from here comes the concept of the one, is it? The many ones in a parallel world. Or the one that got away. मत पूछ मुझसे मेरे दिल की कहानी ए हमदम इसमें बहुत पर्दा नशीनों के भी नाम आते. Wow. Right, so Mufti, what are your views on the thoughts of the conquest of Spain, justified or unlawful? Muslim conquest of Spain, I feel it was justified, absolutely. In fact, Muslims contributed significantly. Right, the concept of finding your other half. you see, sometimes it's, I don't know. I think in some ways we all kind of long for that, for the kind of perfect. But does it exist? Because we are not perfect. So does the perfect other exist? Will it not always be a perpetual search? That's the thing. Dil kam bakht. You know, will the heart ever be kind of content? You know, what as the poet says, Salamun alayha, Salamun alayha in hiya radiyat. What's the poem? He says, Salamun alayha in hiya qabilat wa illa fassalamu ala ukhra. He says that, he says salam. I think there's actually an Urdu equivalent as well, where he says that something about ye nahi to or sahi or nahi to or, you know, something like. So he's saying that salam, like greetings to her as long as she accepts it. If not, then chalo, he says, another greetings to another. I don't know. I think in this world, human beings are just we're so confused, and and it is a kind of yearning, but I don't know. And I think when we find it, we don't know, and we're so confused. I'll tell you something. This is an interesting thought. I feel sometimes people, we ruin, I don't know if ruin is the right word, but we miss it. We kind of miss the trees for the wood by thinking that we have to talk to connect. And I feel that because we're a talking species, that we feel that, you know, oh, now that we need to talk, we need to, and if we're not talking, we're not kind of really connecting. But I feel sometimes some people, just their company, it does it. Like, you don't actually really need to be talking. I don't know, like these are, I don't know, am I just getting too old? But I genuinely think that. I think sometimes there's just you see, it's just the actual company, but we think that the silence is indicating something wrong. So therefore we need to break the silence by talking. And so long as we're constantly talking, everything's okay. But I think that might actually be disrupting the, I don't know, this is a thought, a philosophy. Chalo, we'll see. Maybe I'm just staying, maybe it's the quarantine. Mufti, can you marry random Christian woman or not? Random. Look at everybody's intrigued. Why the word random? Do you consider a miracle in itself? Was able to preach starting alone and not if you preached Buddhism? Sorry, that question seems to, how long would you survive? Do I consider that the Prophet preaching alone was a miracle? I do. I'll tell you, you know, my view on the message the Prophet ﷺ brought, the Quran. I feel that, and people will disagree with me here, but I genuinely feel that it was too easy to mess it up. It was too easy to make dogmatic errors. Like, is it not fascinating that when the Prophet is asked about certain things, the responses, even if they are sometimes vague, it was too easy not to be vague. So let's take the virgin birth. Now, I don't believe in the virgin birth, but it's interesting that none of the verses ever clearly state it. And when they asked the Prophet about the virgin birth, the verse is that his similitude is like that of Adam. Like it's Adam. But it was so easy to hear state that Adam did not have a father, but the Quran didn't do it. And then you think, well, wait a minute, but the Adam from this kind of self, and from its partner, and the feminine is used. That from this feminine self and from its partner, and then you were. Now this is and then Allah says, and He sent forth many men and women and so on, and this is mentioned at least 5, and then there's a 6th verse mentioning a similar thing, but never is Adam used there. Now that could have too easily been done. Like, I don't see why. You see, because Adam is mentioned on so many other verses, but yet here Adam alayhi salam is never mentioned as, whereas in the hadith it's mentioned that all of you are created from Adam and Adam from the soil, but yet the Quran never mentions it like that. Whereas if it did mention it like that, it would have still, the message would still fly. Like, people in that era would have still easily accepted these things. So I find this, to me, is like one of the most compelling points of the Quran as an individual. This is, to me, that it was too easy to make these kind of dogmatic statements that were already existing. But it always seemed like, for example, the Quran never mentions Hawa, Eve, whereas the Hadith does. Now that's interesting, like, because I would have felt that Adam, you see, I would feel that Adam was the father of the cognitive revolution, and he would have mated with multiple Homo sapiens, like multiple female, humans that were around. And that's how humans would have, obviously with this cognitive revolution, would have spread. It wasn't just him and one woman, like that would not have been the case. So, and it's interesting, the Quran never says that like that. It never mentions Eve per se. And what's also interesting, check this out, how the Quran highlights that when they take, and it never mentions that there was what the fruit was, it just mentions this tree that they're eating from. Never mentions it as a fruit. Now, when they eat, and I believe that it was like a psychedelic substance that was psychoactive, and it triggered that kind of, because they were already on a spectrum of consciousness, it triggered it and created this kind of, boosted this effect. Now, it's interesting that the Quran mentions that one of their first reactions is فَبَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا. Their private parts become apparent to them all of a sudden. I mean, it didn't mean that they never knew they had private parts before. Of course they did. And they start to cover it. Now, what's interesting is shame. First of all, shame is a social phenomenon. Human beings seldom feel shame if on their own. They only feel it in the presence of others or if they're being watched. And shame is incredibly tied in, biologically, even within the brain now, to self-awareness. So you see that the parts of the brain, like there's within the frontal cortex and the temporal lobe, you see these parts get activated with shame and guilt and things like this. Now, if this theory be true, Neanderthals would have also worn clothes, but as in they wrapped themselves. But that, you see, what I feel is that Neanderthals would have worn these kind of hides of the animals they killed, but it was for warmth, not for kind of modesty reasons, not out of shame or kind of that I don't think they really cared about the private parts. It was more about staying warm. And I think Homo sapiens, modern Homo sapiens, since the cognitive revolution, there has been this element of shame around the genitals. And so this is, and I find that amazing that the Quran highlights that, and it links it with some kind of some substance they take, and it triggers this consciousness, and then with it you've got you've got this shame aspect. On another note, I was reading up some psychological studies, and they say that shame is when they had several participants, and when they were exposed to certain stimuli that triggered shame in the brain, it was equal, it was mirrored by male and female, it was the same. But guilt, things that triggered guilt, there were more regions of the brain in men that are triggered for guilt than are for that are for women. So for both men and women, it triggered the kind of frontal cortex. But for men, it also triggered, I think it was part of the occipital lobe. It triggered also the amygdala. It triggered other parts, which in women it didn't for guilt. I find that fascinating as well. Like, does guilt, and that's something I'm still investigating, does guilt wear down then separately on men than on women? But these are all incredibly fascinating. Somebody said the forbidden fruit tree being marijuana. No, not marijuana. Psychoactive substances. That which connect you, the portal to consciousness. But yeah. People, right, so what is gold? Summon Young, I don't know what that is trying to say. People, right, so I know Ramadan is approaching. So once again, I've been asked a few questions on Ramadan. So let's get a few of them out the way. Mahin has asked a question. Does the Quran mention human tendency towards cults? I don't think it specifically mentions that, but I think you could understand that from certain things, but I don't think it doesn't clearly mention things like humans have a tendency to be in a cult, or but I suppose maybe people could extract certain similarities of how people of groupthink mentality. Right, so Ramadan, people, Ramadan. Right, what is going on? Right, so it's round the corner. I'll reiterate some of my people have asked about the fast. Once again, the same rulings. You can, if you are ill due to corona, then fast mat corona. If you've got the corona, then fast mat corona. Then do not fast, people. You need obviously to improve your immune system, and you can make it up, or you can simply give fidya. That you have that option, or you can make it up later on. Now, that's if you have the coronavirus. If you don't have it and are afraid of getting it, or you want to remain strong, then option one, you still want to fast and you feel you can fast, then go for it. You should fast. If you want to do it, then you should do it. Now, you want to keep the entire full lengthy day fasts, the entire daylight fast, within the northern western hemisphere, which is going to be obviously, in certain parts, incredibly long days. We're talking about 18 hours, maybe 17 hours. So that's up to you. If you want to do it, fine. Okay. Option 2. Okay, people. So you've got check that out. Spying on me. Right, so you've got 1, people, we've got 2. Option 2 is that you can do a timed fast. So you so you just fast a certain amount of hours. You can set it at 12 to 13 hours in a day, and you can just fast that timed. You can begin it with, let's say, sunrise, and you just go with whatever the hours are, or whenever you begin it. That's option 2. I believe you can do that. There is a mezzanine, there is something in between them too. I was going to say, if you want to do the entire day but just want a tiny extension, you can do that by fasting up until sunrise. Okay, that I do have a video explaining that. Some of the Salafi used to do that. So option 3, people, is, as I've explained, you don't fast at all. You just delay the whole month, and you can make up for it later on in the year when you feel that now I'm ready to do it. So all of those are actually valid options, and I don't feel it's permissible for any one person to condemn another. So okay, so cool. I hope that helps. And it's interesting actually, we were discussing in the Mind Trap about Imam Shafi'i and his statement that when he's asked, what if, you know, some people deem music halal, some people deem marriage without with no witnesses halal, or they deem this halal, or mut'ah halal, or that halal, and we deem these things clearly haram, or they deem nabidh, an alcoholic kind of drink, halal. He said that you have no right to kind of condemn them on it, because you can disagree with it, but you can't condemn them because they believe that to be permissible. And look at the things he's quoting, like alcoholic things and this and that. And yeah, cool. I hope that is of some help. Right, so okay. Other fast-related questions that I've been asked about things like... I've been asked about inhalers. Of course, you can use inhalers during Ramadan. It does not break the fast. Quick, rapid round, Ramadan rapid round. I've been asked about things like if you people who need certain medication. Once again, my answer would be the same. Look, if you need it that bad, then you can just resort to the earlier 3 options I've given. Okay, cool. What is the fidya? The fidya is a brief amount, the average amount of a kind of meal. So in the UK, I would assume it would be £3 to £4 would cover the fidya of 1 day. Right, pregnant women and women who are still feeding their children, breastfeeding their children, right? So this category of people, they do not need to fast. They can make up the fast, or they can simply, according to Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar, they can just pay the fidya. They do not need to make up the fast. And that's my ruling as well. They do not need to make up. They can if they want to, but they do not need to. It's sufficient that they pay a fidya to the poor for each day they've missed. Cool. Does IV fluids break the fast? No, it doesn't. And Sheikh Muhammad Al-Aziz Ja'ayit had given that fatwa with injections, taking injections that even had nutrients, had like vitamins and things like this in it. He said does not break the fast. He was the Sheikh Maliki in his time, from the up until the late 60s. So and I definitely second or back that fatwa. Cool. Right, this takes us to what's been going on with some of the masala segment, right? So people, once again, I'm brought to my beloved I've got so many beloveds, but it's the same. People, we're back to our mashallah Chaudhry Humpty, sorry, I mean Hamza Maqbool Saab, who had been speaking about remembering me in one of his videos,
and make him even famouser than he already is, and even more glorious and more YouTube followers and more. And none of that stuff bothers me, inshallah. Inshallah, if he's using it for deen, it will be good for him in this world and in the hereafter as well. I have no problem with any of that. Even our friend, the two-eyed Dajjal from Birmingham, he would give all sorts of weird abject positions. I never said anything. It's only when he started spouting the aqaid of kufr, in making inkar that Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam is dead and he won't come back, etc., which is a far worse statement than what this individual made. Even though both are bad and they're both in the same, they seem to be progressing in the same line of badness, but one is much more far gone.
Thank you, shukran. So the latest interesting thing is that here is a statement by Sheikh Chaudhry Humpty. and you see, this is my point, people. Before I go into this, I just want to explain. These people, why do I highlight some of these things? Because I'm genuinely telling you, these people do not know their stuff. I know that they, you know, by looking at them, they look like what people stereotype as imams. So you assume that these people know what they're talking about when it comes to Islam, but the truth is they don't. You know, and I think just by knowing the word fatwa, I get it, it has the word fat in it, but it doesn't mean that it makes everybody qualified. And this is an ideal example that here you have a statement by Chaudhry Hamti Saab, who got into an online battle back and forth, a Facebook battle with some other people because he was trying to teach them about Taraweeh. And he said, look, there's a lot of cool traditions from which the, which form the intellectual heritage of the Maliki tradition, because he's Maliki. And he's trying to say this doesn't mean it's an unsorted free-for-all. The fatwa is only from Mukhtasar Khalil. Right, so you can only give fatwas from Mukhtasar Khalil, and you can't give it from other books, and you can only give it by commentaries written on the Mukhtasar by Dardir and Dasuqi, who were from the last, 2 centuries or so. Taraweeh is 20, not 8. If you want to read 8, knock yourself out, but you are making mukhalafa of a bunch of stuff, including the amal, and this was important for the Malikiyah.
Oh my God! No! Oh my God!
Right, so now the interesting thing is that this went right, no, I'm getting let me just one moment. Right, this went back and forth online between Hamti Saab and between some other Malikiyas, some students of, and himself, Sheikh Abdul Shakur Brooks. It went back and forth. And although I personally have my disagreements with both of these imams, but to be honest, Sheikh Brooks, Abdul Shakur Brooks, really schooled Hamza. So Hamti Sahab, Chaudhry Sahab got proper schooled. So I thought, well, this is interesting for the masala. So what had happened, people, since you're wondering, is you've got Hamza went on after making that post. He made there were several comments that were kind of put up there where he highlights, where he's being told that, look, the Khalil is a book for, to say that Khalil is a book for fatawa and other books like this book called the Tawdi' is not acceptable, that this just doesn't make any sense. So where on earth are you kind of getting this stuff from? And this went back and forth, and there were several kind of statements, and this is Abdul Shakur Brooks, his own kind of post. He's highlighting this, saying, look, he highlights stating that, look, Ibn Abi Zayd has said in his Risala that, many of the ulama of this madhab, of the Maliki madhab, say there's no prescribed number for Taraweeh. A person could even just pray 2 rak'at, but that's not the way it's done. And generally, he goes on to highlight here several other scholars that have highlighted this. He doesn't mention, but Abu Bakr ibn Arabi also mentions this. Ibn Abdul Bar also mentions this. He's mentioned here Ahmad Zarruq mentioning it, that a person could even pray 2, and there's no such thing as a fixed number within this tradition. Now, if I just bring up, so they quote this book called they quote this book called the Tawdi'. So Chaudhry Hamti Saab's response was, the Tawdi' is an interesting piece of academia and history. So he says, I've been to over a dozen Murabit schools in Mauritania. I don't recall any of them memorized, much less taught the Tawdi'. All of them taught Khalil and had every intermediate student memorize Khalil. He was then told in a response that obviously they don't teach other books either. Books like the Mudawwana of Imam Malik are not taught either. It doesn't mean that it's not It's not reliable.
Make him even famous.
So I want to add here, by the way, I just want to explain for you guys now. So what is going on here? So let me just bring this up. So Chaudhry Saab here is explaining that the Tawdih, you guys are saying the Tawdih is written by Khalil himself. So Khalil, this person who he's saying, who has this small book called the Mukhtasar, what Chaudhry Hamti is saying is that the Mukhtasar is the book you give fatwa from in the Maliki Madhab. That's it. Because he said in the beginning that this book is for fatwa. But by the way, so many other books have written that. Ibn Abdul Barr in his Kafi writes that in his introduction, this is why I'm writing Al-Kafi, because this is what the fatwa will be given from, and is given from in the school of Medina. In fact, he calls it the sufficient text. But anyway, coming back to Hamti Saab, so when he's told that, look, Khalil himself, first of all, the Mukhtasar of Khalil has many opinions in it, which people will say are weak opinions. Secondly, Khalil himself, the author of the Mukhtasar, has a commentary on this other book of Ibn al-Hajib called the Tawdih. And they say, look, the Tawdih in it, Khalil himself is saying there's a difference of opinion on Taraweeh, and it has no fixed number, and so on and so forth. And then Hamti Saab's reply is that, well, I've been to Mauritania and I don't recall them memorizing the Tawdih. Right, okay, so he says, whereas they do with Khalil. See now, people, this, right, can you guys see this book over here, starting right here where my finger is, and it runs across to this volume there. Right, so this is the Tawdih. Okay, so you can see it right here. This particular print has 7 volumes. Of course, they're not memorizing the Tawdih. Mukhtasar Khalil is, right, it's a tiny volume, a simple book that is just made, that is, I've got it in several places. I mean, it'll be like something that thin. So it wouldn't even, it'll be like, even that is too thick for it, really. I've got a few variants of it. It's over there now. It's a very thin book, which is just a summary text. Nobody, of course, people don't memorize commentaries. So there is a commentary text. Like, this goes to show, you see, when these people say to me that, oh, this person is misquoting, he doesn't know the Maliki Madhab, and I tell you guys that, look, these people saying they just don't know the Maliki Madhab. They don't know the books, they don't know the scholars, they don't know these things. And people think, well, oh no, you know, I'm just exaggerating. How can they not know? Here in plain writing, you have people like you have himself. I mean, I'm not, so, you know, I can't be making this up, saying that Hamza Maqbool, saying, look, when I'm in Mauritania, they all taught Khalil and they memorized it, but nobody memorized Tawdih. See, that's as dumb as it gets. So this is my point, that these people, seriously, and he got absolutely schooled on that point, but it just goes to show, it's so unfortunate that, you see, because people look at these people and they think, well, you know what, he obviously looks the part, mashallah, having consumed all that halwa, half a halwa. So they think, look, he must definitely know what he's talking about, but he doesn't. Knowledge is not found in the jubba people or in the thobe. Okay, it's not found in the, you know, in the 3-foot turban that you wrap around your head. Knowledge is in the brain and in the hearts, people. Allah, it is an enlightenment. So don't be fooled. So when you see these kind of things, I had to bring that up. I saw that. I was like, that is absolutely hilarious. But obviously, you know, you get people like you know, our Chaudhry Saab getting these kind of indications. There was another post as well, just to bring that up. I'm just trying to, un momento, let me see if I can bring this up. One moment. This was on earrings.
The ears and the nose.
Right.
Etc.
Okay. This is
the
one moment. One moment. I'm gonna. I've got to bring this back. Right. So.
What are the limits for ear piercing? Can you pierce the top of your ear, or is it just the bottom? And what is the reason for not piercing any other part of the body? For example, the ears and the nose, etc. It's permissible to pierce any part of the body that is considered to be acceptable among decent people as a source of adornment for women. So, for example, if you are piercing the ears, which means that if you're piercing 1 or 2 at the bottom, that's considered to be quite normal. 1 or 2 is kind of acceptable to a certain degree. But to pierce up and above, then that gets a bit abnormal for most people. Most people don't do that. Right? So that would become problematic. Likewise, piercing the nose is fine. Because again, you have many Muslim cultures which allow that, and it's considered to be quite normal and not indecent. The reason why it's not permissible to go around piercing every part of your body is because that's manipulating your body, in a sense. And there's no muthla in Islam. Muthla means there's no, there is no mutilation of any part of your body to make a hole through it, etc. So that's one of the reasons for it.
Right, so that, people, is Mufti Mangera Saab, and as you can see, he's been asked a question on piercing body parts, or piercing the kind of the helix, the upper part of the ear, or the tragus, or the ear lobes, or piercing the nose, and he begins by saying, well, you can do that because it's based on what people find approvable. And then he says, well, actually decent people, I don't know who the hell he's referring to as decent. Secondly, he says, well, no, and you can't pierce the kind of helix, the upper part of the ear, because that's not what decent people do, and Muslims don't do that. I'm thinking, what kind of ethnographic studies has Mangera Saab been doing? What is he on about? People pierce the... You know, when I studied in Pakistan and I used to go to the village, my own grandmother had several piercings on her helix, the upper part of the ear, and several women in the village used to have that. And that is a very common standard practice. They used to have it, you know, they used to have several kind of piercings. This, oh, well, you can't pierce the helix because, well, decent people don't do that. It's problematic. Who problematized it? You know, this isn't somebody's dad's deen. They just like when they like, this is problematic. Why? Because in my house nobody does it. Acha 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 ghar ki baat kiye hain. So it's just like, this is the dumbest stuff. And then the point when they justify, okay, so what are the evidences? Evidences why you can't pierce your body, he says. You can't pierce your body because that would be mutilation. And you think, well, but what about the ear? Oh, no, but you can do the ear. But isn't that mutilation? Oh, no, but decent people consider it okay. And you think, well, no, but I just thought you said there's no muthla in Islam, which muthla, by the way, has nothing to do with this. Muthla is when you get the dead person, you get a dead person, and you disfigure a dead person. This is what they used to do after battles. So they used to kind of taunt the enemy. Using muthla for body piercing is ridiculous. Now, I could understand if somebody completely distorted their face. They changed it, and I have seen some things like that. And yes, I could understand if that's the kind of analogy he was making. But normal body piercing, whether it's on the face, eyebrows, other parts of the, the tragus, the helix, the lobe, above the lip, whether it's, I don't know, the lip, the tongue, whatever people want to pierce, if they do, it's not haram. It can never be haram like that. Okay, this kind of, whether it's their body piercing, they want to pierce the navel, many women do that, or whatever, it's not haram. Okay, now people may say, oh, people don't like it, it's whatever, that's a different discussion. It's up to people, it's based on the culture, the fashion, but it's never a haram thing. And to say that, oh, this is distortion, but when you do it here, it's okay, and when you do it here, it's haram, that is the dumbest of all arguments. I mean, these are the arguments that make religion sound so dumb, honestly. And speaking of questions and urgencies and Ramadan and Muftis, and on a side note, by the way, people don't probably know this. Mufti Mangera Saab, let me just bring up the comments again, they just disappeared. Right. Mufti Mangera Saab, many years ago, was actually a teacher of mine. Allah. So, when I told you, when I was just telling you guys today that when I first started to practice Islam and then I set off to travel. So, I think I must have just been 18 and I went to Damascus and I met Mufti Mangera Saab at that time. And his name's Abdurrahman Mangera, I believe. So I met him at that time, and I was in Damascus University doing the Arabic course, and he came there, and although I don't think he enrolled, but he used to come there often. So I met him, and because I was going through that whole very strict phase as well, and I remember him telling me about his whole ijazah and in the Quran, and how he was saying that the Indian system of hadith studies is so enviable and it's the peak of envy and things like that. And to be fair, I'm actually in that aspect indebted to him because he inspired me to get an ijazah in the Quran. He inspired me that I want an ijazah in the Quran, and he inspired me to study hadith. Because I thought, you know what, wow, that is actually something. Because he was telling me that, oh, here they don't have this. And then I studied Hanafi fiqh with him for several months. Privately, I used to visit him. Although many years later when I met him, when I emerged as Mufti Abu Layth, I actually told him that, oh, I don't know if you remember me, and he obviously he couldn't remember me at all, but everything I said about, oh, I saw you at Damascus University in this year, he was like, yes, I was there. I said, I remember you having this certificate, this large certificate signed by Sheikh Abdul Razak Al-Halabi, and he was like, absolutely, I did have that. And I said, and I visited you, I used to read Nur al-Idah to you I think in Muhajirin, and he was like, absolutely, I had a house there. And he was like, everything you're saying is so spot on, but I just don't recall you. So people obviously suppress trauma. No, I'm only joking. At that time, I was a totally, I was going through that phase. I was still in that different mindset. But it's interesting. I mean, thank God I didn't continue in that mindset. Otherwise, I'd be giving fatwas that piercing the helix is haram and people. And on that note, we've got another very fascinating question. Peoples. See, the questions, people, the questions. This is, you see, there's a lot of people are so intrigued. So there was a Maliki group and an Ash'ari group discussing theology and fiqh. And the question that comes forward is that's really boggling the people. Right, so let me just bring up this and I'll just read it out for you. As you can see, people, this is what bothers. This is on the minds of people. This is what they really kind of caught up about. Okay, yaar, what is going on? So, someone has intercourse with his wife at Ramadan and stops right with Fajr. And he ejaculates. Sorry. And actually, we're going to use a small prop. Okay, so so somebody at dawn, just no pre-dawn. Sorry. They're like, okay, we need to. They're excited. So they start to have intercourse. But what happens is they stop right with Fajr. But then the problem doesn't stop there, people. The problem is the bechare ejaculate right after Fajr. So this, put everything aside. I want to know how this person's timing works. That, just look at his timing. This person, man, at the instant crack of dawn, he stops. Climaxes. He just holds that climax. He's like, He's like, where's this gone? He just holds on. He's like, this has come to an end. This has come to, the sun's up. Oh, sorry, this dawn, the crack. with the crack, this crack is over as well. That's it. So he stops right there. He's like, control. Isko kehte hain control, Baba. And then the bechara, whilst he's controlling, does it perfectly. He's like, it's like you've got a tight space and he brings the car from so far, ripping it at incredible speed, does it. Complete handbrake, takes it right in and parks it perfectly. And then once he's parked, as he switches it off, he kind of stalls it. It leaps forward and crashes into the car in front of it. He then ejaculates just after dawn. He's like, yep, I did it. Oh. It's like, oh, दैया ये क्या हो गया हमसे? What, this one not nice, my friend. It's like, this one not nice, my friend. I thought I told you to halt, put the brakes on, but this one not nice. This one big problem. Now I got a fiqhi problem, fiqhi problem. Now I need to go to the imam and say, Imam, brake good, but also brake not very good. Where did these people come up with these problems from? And so this is what the Ummah is engulfed in. Post-Fajr pour-downs. After Fajr, there's like, just as Fajr, the Adhan pours, there's a whole downpour. And the bichara's like, yaar, damn, what do I do now? So, well, this is big problem, this one not nice, my friend. This one, we need to work on that braking power. So, well, I've got good news for him, for the brother that's so concerned that he had to put this question up in a, well, we can take a ruling from this hadith that says, look, if you are eating and it is Fajr, then finish your food. That's what the hadith says, doesn't it? It says, finish your food, relax. And once you've finished, then go to pray. So if it so happens that you are busy, this one, where's my little prop? Busy, excited, then you can, don't worry, this one you can finish it. Relax, relájate, tranquilo, tranquilo. And then you can carry on with your business. Don't worry, the fatwa is there to save you. I've saved you. Unlike your braking system, you can rely on my fatwas. He's like, yaar, I wanted an emergency stop. Ye to anti-locking brake system ho gaya. Anti-locking brake, this one. Anyway, people, you know what? Let's wrap this up. It's been awesome as always. Right, if you have any questions, do reach out to me. If you, some people making it very naughty in the comments there about swallowing, teasing the viewers, right? So people reach out to me, any questions, any suggestions for the Mind Trap. I should be on tomorrow night. Just watch this space. The only thing is I can't sometimes give perfect timings of when it's going to happen. I know it's around midnight. Just watch this space, subscribe. That way you'll have, you'll get notifications. You'll know when things are going down, people, when things are going down. Make sure you do like, share my opinions. Get them out there, people. Spread the fitan and fasad. Allahu Akbar. Other than that, those of you that don't tune in till next, I don't know whether we're going to have a Monday nights in Ramadan. I'm still in two minds. But till next time, take very good care of yourselves. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, people. Much love. Stay blessed. Mwah. Over and out.